Welcome to Nightlife, the first hour.
All right, well, he's ready, so I hope you are.
Motor Talk with Toby Hagen.
Toby, evening.
Good evening, Phil.
How are you?
I'm good. Good.
What's up? You've been all hydrogen, etc.
I have, hydrogen refuelling stations. So the first one in Australia, the first publicly available one in Australia is now in Canberra, in quite a weird area. You sort of initially think, why have they put it there? It's in a sort of industrial area in Fishwick, about 4 kilometres from Parliament House.
Yeah.
But
this is interesting, though, isn't it? So up until now, there's been no public hydrogen refuel. There's one in Sydney, isn't there?
There's one at Hyundai's head office in Sydney.
Right. So and that's just basically been for their fleet of.
For their fleet, I mean, they've offered it to other car companies too to say.
I thought Toyota had one.
Toyota's got one, but it's on the back of a truck, so it gets trucked around to wherever they want it. So again, it's a. I mean, if you looked at the environmental impact of that, obviously it wouldn't quite work out. But they're doing it as proof of concept. They're showing that the technology can work. So Toyota and Hyundai are the two brands in Australia working hardest on hydrogen fuel cell technology, which is a form of electric car. So they're called fuel cell electric vehicles. The basic difference is in an electric car or a battery electric vehicle, as they're called, you've obviously got a big battery pack, typically around half a tonne worth of batteries. In a hydrogen fuel cell, they do without that big battery pack, and they have obviously hydrogen fuel tanks and a fuel cell which can create a chemical reaction to create electricity. So basically, you've got the hydrogen, which is your energy source, and that can create electricity on demand. So
yeah, that's in short, that's the deal, isn't it? With
yeah.
Okay, so tell me about this refueling station. What does it look like? Do you have to go in a full hazmat suit or what?
No, you don't. They were all wearing high-vis vests, and I said, have I got to have one of them? They went, no, you're fine. So look, very different. Look, I guess the basics of it are similar to a regular service station. It's got the forecourt. You've got a single Bowser at the moment.
Can you get chips and drinks? They
don't sell you overpriced chips and drinks. So, and I don't even think they have a register, because for the next 12 months, it's actually free to fill up there. So an amazing deal. You can go and get free fuel. The only thing is you need to have a car that'll fit it. But so look, the actual refueling process, I went through it myself. It's very similar to, it's almost a cross between an LPG car and a petrol car. So you pull the trigger out of the Bowser, very similar to a petrol one, except the nozzle on the end's quite large. It's actually a giant metal collar, and it's quite cold.
Does it look like an LPG thing?
A little bit, a little bit. So that nozzle, that collar, goes over quite a thin nozzle on the car, and it sort of clips in place once you pull the trigger. Once you pull the trigger to go what would normally be pumping petrol, but obviously this time around it's hydrogen. Yeah. So once you pull that trigger, that's it, your work's done. There's actually a fair bit of electronics going on.
You don't have to hang on to the trigger.
You don't have to hang on to it. So the car, there's actually a digital chat between the car and the Bowser.
So you can only get a full tank. There's nothing in between.
I don't know about that, actually. You probably can say only get half a tank if you want.
$10 worth.
Something like that.
Remember being a student, you had to buy $5 worth?
Yeah. Well, I still do that because I've got a car I don't drive often, so I'll go and put $4 in it or something just to do my Sunday drive. So, But yeah, so as I said, very normal in that regard. And
so it tells you when it's full?
It tells you when it's full. And they sort of talk to each other. The Bowser and the car talk to each other. The car, it actually gets information off the car in terms of how full its tanks are. Mm-hmm. There are 3 hydrogen tanks in the Nexo, the Hyundai Nexo, which is this first car they've got. It then tells it what the temperature of the hydrogen is, or of the fuel tanks are, because they can't go apparently over 85 degrees Celsius. So they actually pump the hydrogen into the car at negative 40 degrees Celsius.
Really?
Basically, so that it's under high pressure, up to 10,000 psi, 700 bar, which, put that into perspective, your average car tyre is 35 psi. So many multiples of that.
That's quite some fuel tank then.
The fuel tanks are made of carbon fibre. It's probably about 3 or 4 centimetres thick all the way around. So extremely strong fuel tanks, obviously to protect in a crash, but also to deal with extremely high pressure. So so the technology in there is incredible, but it's all very normal in terms of the car.
What's being pumped into? So it's the hydrogen in a gaseous form, is it?
Yeah, and it's 99.99% pure. the hydrogen that's going in. The car's actually got exhaust pipes, so it's got 2 exhaust pipes out the back, and it sort of does a little wee at certain times, so it lets out just water, basically. So it's just
only
water dribbles out the exhaust
water
pipe.
that comes out the back.
Only water, yeah. So it's so look, there's a lot of debate about hydrogen. Probably the fiercest opponent to it is Elon Musk, the boss of Tesla, who says it's a waste of time. There's no point investing in hydrogen.
Why does he say that? Because he runs an electric car company.
Possibly, but he thinks that battery electric technology is the way to go. The argument for batteries is that obviously we're getting better energy density out of batteries, and the batteries are getting smaller, lighter, and more affordable. So at the moment they're very expensive, they're very big, they're very heavy. That's changing, and the feeling is that'll be changing for the next decade or so, that we'll be getting lighter and more efficient batteries. They're also faster charging. So there's battery technology now that's been worked on for 5-minute charging. So once you get down to 5-minute recharging, the argument is you don't need hydrogen, so you don't need to go to the efforts to go and get hydrogen. One of the big negatives with hydrogen is you need more energy to create it than you end up with in the end. So if you're talking about an electric car, in some ways you're better off just putting it straight into the battery to start with. But that obviously, if you're making it from renewable energy, that argument a little bit goes out the door. And the big argument for hydrogen is it's very portable. And it also, well, I think one of the things they're trying to push through, or the car makers are trying to push and say, listen, look at what the hydrogen economy can do, is it can make Australia energy independent. So you don't need, we don't need to go shipping petrol and diesel in from overseas.
Where do we get the hydrogen from?
Well, at this place in Canberra, they're making it themselves. So it's they're basically starting with water, and they use clean electricity, so renewable electricity.
So through electrolysis process, they split.
Yep.
They split water and they get hydrogen out of that.
Yeah, but one of the big arguments for hydrogen, apparently,
that's very energy intensive, isn't it? Yeah.
It is, yeah. So that's what I'm saying. You use more energy than you end up with in the hydrogen at the end. But one of the areas and one of the arguments for, I guess, trucking hydrogen to the various stations rather than having an electrolysis machine at each one, is that something like a wind farm or a solar farm, where at certain times of the day they will be producing more energy than is required. So a wind farm, if a big wind's up in the middle of the night, they're suddenly getting rid of a lot of energy because demand isn't there. So you can have a hydrogen plant put on the side of it, using that excess energy whenever it comes up, and just storing it as hydrogen to then be trucked off to hydrogen stations wherever they're required.
Okay. I mean, this might be an argument for what the rooftop solar thing that they're complaining about.
Absolutely. And also, I mean, electric cars generally, once we get vehicle to grid and cars can start feeding back into the grid, then you can have your electric car parked there during the day using that excess solar, or charging from that excess solar, and feeding it back into the house at night, for example. So yeah, I mean, look, it's there's a long way to go with all this stuff, but the people who are really into this hydrogen technology, we spoke to a few experts today, and it's incredible the vision they've got, not only for, as I said, energy independence in Australia, but also potentially big exports of hydrogen for Australia, and using it as potentially for microgrids and all sorts of stuff around the country. So yeah, and cars. I mean, Hyundai says they think, again, fast forwarding out maybe 10 or 20 years here, they say basically any car today that you see is powered by a petrol engine, they think will probably be a battery electric vehicle, and any vehicle today powered by a diesel engine will probably be a hydrogen fuel cell. So I guess your bigger four-wheel drives, your towing vehicles, trucks, heavy transport.
The argument being that you get more range out of it.
Yeah, you don't need as big a battery packs. I mean, you look at trucks in particular. It's actually Tesla at the moment. Tesla with the Semi is trying to get it authorised for sale in Australia. They're having an issue with width and weight of that truck because it's so heavy because of the batteries. And this is something that a few manufacturers have said with battery electric vehicles and trucks. You have to carry so many tons of battery that you end up knocking off the carrying capacity of the truck. So it doesn't make sense necessarily as a truck. So that's where hydrogen can come in.
That's where hydrogen might come in.
Yeah, absolutely.
How much range do you get off a tank of hydrogen?
So this Hyundai Nexo, they've got a mid-sized SUV. So I guess similar to a RAV4 or CX-5, that sort of thing. It's got 3 hydrogen tanks that take 6.33 kilograms of hydrogen, and that can take you a claimed 666 kilometres. So it's it uses roughly 1 kilogram of hydrogen per 100 kilometres. So I guess a truck will probably use 5, 6, 7 times
How much
that.
is hydrogen?
Yeah, we asked that. Well, Angus Taylor has apparently put a target of $2 per kilogram for manufacturing of hydrogen. Mm-hmm. Now, it's nowhere near that at the moment. The European experience suggests that hydrogen would sell for something like $10 or $15 per kilogram Australian. Again, at the moment, I think it's going to be a lot more than that, but I think that's the target they're working towards. I guess make it similar to the price of petrol. Mm-hmm. People are used to paying for that, and you know, provided it doesn't fluctuate. That's another thing they're saying is they don't think you'll see the fluctuations.
Because there'd be no reason for fluctuations, would there?
No, and there's also potentially going to be a lot more competition in suppliers of hydrogen. I mean, you've got everything from, you know, Fortescue, the mining company, working on hydrogen, to obviously the current oil producers, the fuel companies, to tech companies and all sorts of startup companies. So there's going to be theoretically going to be a lot more competition in that energy market. So yeah.
What is the answer to what a lot of people say is if there's a rear end collision, what stops the whole thing going off like an atom bomb?
So well, I did a bit of looking into that too, because you know obviously everyone says Hindenburg. Yeah. That's not a good look. I guess the strength of the tanks is one part of it. The other part is apparently if they've done tests where they've fired bullets, so a gun at a full hydrogen fuel tank, and they claim that it won't necessarily ignite, but if it does, they've got systems to shut it down. But to do the hydrogen bomb thing, you know, a massive thing, apparently you need enormous heat, so that's why they combine nuclear bombs with a hydrogen tank to create a hydrogen bomb. So you need apparently millions of degrees Celsius to create the heat to turn it into a hydrogen bomb. So
I don't mean a real hydrogen bomb, but I mean it's a highly flammable liquid. Liquid.
Absolutely.
I mean gas. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so's petrol, and so's you know all
it's
the
more
other things.
More volatile than petrol, I think. Isn't it?
The impression we got was no, and I haven't done the research on this, but the impression was no. It was there's potentially it's less susceptible to igniting with a spark or something like that. That something like petrol is once petrol starts to leak in a crash. But look, clearly there are dangers. I mean, any time you got that much energy in something, there's going to be there's a potential risk there.
It's still in a gaseous state as you put it in, is it? It's not in a liquid state.
No, it's gas, I believe.
Pressure.
I believe it's gas. So. Yeah. And as I said, it goes in at negative 40 degrees. It increases, I think, sometimes up to about 30 or 40 degrees. But then once it's in the car, it sort of stabilises to ambient temperature. So
once it's in the car, basically the car just then operates like an electric car.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not distinguishable really from any other electric car.
No, absolutely not. So it's, you know, the same electric motors. It's got the regenerative braking. It's got all that stuff. So
you can't buy. I mean, it's a public refueling station, but you can't buy one, can you?
No,
a fuel cell car at the moment?
No. So the 20 cars they've got here at the moment are for the ACT government. They've bought they're leasing them as part of a trial. Mm-hmm. So they're putting them on their fleet. They've got a fleet of electric vehicles as well. They're putting them on a fleet to trial them. The Queensland government, I believe, has also ordered 5 of them, and they're looking at other fleet buyers. And I asked them, I said, what if a punter comes in and says, I've really got to get myself one of them? How do I do it? And they basically said, look, we're not going to say no, but we're not selling them. We're only leasing them, so there'll be lease deals. They're not talking about how much those lease deals are. And they're also asking people a lot of questions about, A, where you're going to live, because the only refuelling station at the moment is in Canberra. Now, there are currently another 9 refuelling stations planned or under development around the country. But considering we've got about 7,000 petrol stations around the country, it's obviously nothing. I mean, you'll have to go searching for them. So they'll ask people questions about that sort of thing. I mean, the feeling is generally for most people, it obviously doesn't make sense at the moment, but that's why they want to focus on governments and fleets. And it's the fleets in particular. One of the things with the location of this of the station in Canberra, it's quite close to an Australia Post depot and a Star Trek Express depot where they've got a heap of forklifts and a heap of delivery vehicles that are sitting there, and they're saying, okay, you guys can have free or cheap hydrogen right here to power your vehicles. So if they can, it's get
interesting,
that
isn't it? Because I mean, this is all what's coming at us, isn't it? I mean, you know, it's not.
There's a lot of chicken and egg here. Like it's
a lot of I know.
Trying to. I mean, the technology works. It's expensive at the moment, so. You know, they're not talking price on this car, but the feeling is it would be around about $100,000 for a car that if you went in and bought a petrol-powered version, you'd probably pay about $50,000 for it. So you're talking about double the price. So it's there's a lot of money going into the tech, but yeah, I mean it's. But
I suppose in theory, it kind of lasts forever, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, the other thing, absolutely.
I mean, you never need to replace the fuel cell, do you? Or do you?
Well, I was actually trying to figure that out tonight. So, no, they've got vehicles that have done 150,000 plus kilometres and they don't need to. They say the tanks are good for, I think it was 4,000 cycles or something. It's 600 kilometres per cycle. So it was something like 5 or 6 million kilometres out of the tanks. The fuel cells, I've read varying reports. Some people say that you can get 4,000 or 5,000 hours out of a vehicle fuel cell. But again, that's going to be 8-10 years plus of driving. So no, I don't think. I think longevity-wise, it's okay. And I mean, look, electric cars generally, reliability-wise, electric cars should be a lot more reliable than petrol-powered cars.
Yeah.
Because once they get to 8 or 10 years old, I mean, an electric motor you don't service. It's life of vehicle, and they're pretty reliable.
They're sealed units. I mean, you never need to service them.
Yeah, they're pretty reliable. They're fine. The battery is the thing that degrades, but it's sort of, you can tell. You can look at that. You can plug in, or the car. Some of the cars will actually tell you what, like your phone does, tells you what percentage of the original battery life is still there. So theoretically, a 10-odd-year-old electric car shouldn't be such a bad used car buy because you haven't got a gearbox to worry about. You haven't got an engine to worry about. All the things that cost a lot of money to fix in an older car, a lot of those things don't exist. You're just going to have a battery that doesn't hold the charge like it once used to. But for some people, that'll be fine.
Although, don't get excited, people, because someone has just serviced his car and found out that the rear brakes needed doing and needed 2 new tyres and this is...
How many thousands?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
But
well over $1,000.
Yeah, so a tip with that, if you get, for instance, brake rotors, so the discs and the pads done at the manufacturer, so the manufacturer of the vehicle, they'll often cost a heck of a lot more than if you go to another mechanic and get those components, aftermarket components of that. You can sometimes halve the price or more. So it's worth shopping around.
I've had rotors and pads and anyway.
Yeah.
Service, tyres, wheel, and I had the lot.
Sounds like you're quite happy with it.
No. Just before we take some calls, 2 new EVs around.
Yeah,
from Kia and Hyundai.
Yeah, so under the skin, these cars are effectively the same thing. So the Kia is called the EV6, the Hyundai is the Ioniq 5, and this is the significance of these cars is that both Kia and Hyundai have electric cars either on sale in Australia or overseas, but these two are the first cars from them built on a platform that is EV only, so designed from the ground up as an electric car. So you end up with packaging and so on. You can package things like the electric motors, the battery pack, the seats and everything in a very specific area to then maximise interior space and comfort. So it's both those cars have got that. They're also both have an 800 volt electrical architecture. The significance of that is most EVs are 400 volt systems. Once you double the voltage, you can have thinner wires, you can have faster charging. And you can faster charging is one of the big ones. Mm-hmm. So both of those have got that 800 volt system. There's not many EVs with that. Porsche Taycan was the first. Audi RS e-tron, which is a sort of twin under the skin of the Porsche, that's also got it. But there's really not a whole lot. As I said, most of them have got a 400 volt architecture. So those two have got that. So. And really interesting designs with both those cars. You can see that they're sort of trying to push into the premium space a little bit. They're very different to the mainstream, I guess, cars that Kia and Hyundai do. So, yeah. Mm.
Okay, and prices are coming down, aren't they? I mean, I know MG, the Chinese brand, says they'll make them on parity with petrol cars by 2025, 2022. Yeah,
there's a few of them saying that. So BYD, one of them as well, the Chinese brand, they're saying that next year in Australia they will have an EV on sale that will be at price parity. Quite a few brands. It depends which brand you talk to, but sort of 2025 to 2030 is the general feeling. It's not just going to be the price of electric cars coming down, though. There's also, I think, we're going to see more price increases on petrol and diesel cars, and we've seen that quite a bit in the last 2 or 3 years in particular. I mean, you take something like a Toyota Yaris is a pretty good example.
Oh, I see. So it's coming at you both ways.
Absolutely. So you've got the petrol cars going up.
So EVs are coming down.
EVs coming down. Yeah. So it's going to make it easier for the EVs. The target will get closer. But yeah, I mean, Toyota Yaris was once a $16,000, $17,000 car. It's now a $25,000 car.
I can't believe it.
Mercedes-Benz has had a few price rises in the last year or so. BMW's increased prices on a bunch of cars. So we're starting to see a lot of cars step up in price quite substantially. And I think it's been less painful for a lot of Australians in the last 12 months or so because a lot of people have ended up with more disposable income and money is so cheap. Obviously, interest rates are so low that borrowing for a car, if it's another $5,000, it doesn't make as much of a difference. So it's yeah.
Let's get to some calls. Jesse's been waiting on. Hello, Jesse. Hi, Jesse. Jesse's disappeared from the scene. Mike, hello. G'day, Mike.
Yeah, g'day guys. Just a quick question, I think Tony made a comment 2 weeks ago about Land Cruisers and towing heavy loads, like 3-ton vans, that kind of stuff. I'm just wondering why they don't recommend light trucks more frequently, because they're just built for the job, whether SUVs and the dual cab utes and stuff just don't do the job as well for that sort of weight.
You mean me generally, why I don't recommend them?
Oh, why you and other motorman journalists don't recommend it?
Yeah, it's interesting because I've spoken to a few tradies who said that that often they use the small Isuzu tippers and stuff for some of their work because they say it's a $50,000 car or vehicle and they can load more gear into it. So from that perspective, I guess the ability to carry gear. Look, to answer your question on it, the main reason is because I don't really drive them that often. I don't know a whole lot about them, and for most people, I believe they'll need a different license. They'll need to step up on their license. So while, yes, I guess some people could go to that extent, there tends to be, I guess, a natural limit there, which a lot of those four-wheel drives try and slip in under, which is the maximum GVM or gross vehicle mass that your license can carry before you have to step up to the next license level. So I'm not saying that in certain applications, obviously, yes, absolutely, it'd probably make sense. I personally don't know a whole lot about them, but yeah, that's probably it.
There's plenty around you can get on the normal license. Just after a long trip, 6-month trip we did.
Yeah.
We noticed a lot of vehicles were broken down basically because they were being pushed to the edge of their all the
absolutely.
Time.
Yeah.
You thought, a light truck sounds like a bit.
I agree. And look, that's one reason a lot of people, I think, are nervous about engine downsizing. You look at some of the engines these days, 2-litre engines rated to tow 3.5 tonnes, for example. And I know people are nervous about that. And certainly, anecdotally, you chat to mechanics and they say that the pressure being forced through some of those fuel injectors these days is enormous. To the point where when they're expensive when they fail, and they can fail sooner than a lot of people would expect. So I guess an under-stressed engine, a bigger engine that's not having to work as hard, there's an argument for that. But at the same time, obviously,
it's not just the engine element. We saw plenty of broken V8 Land Cruisers because people were driving them on, towing 3-ton vans down dirt roads and bits and pieces, and just totally overtaxed for what they were doing.
Sure.
The GVM on those is very small when you just take in the car by itself. It's only 300 or 400 kilos.
Yeah, absolutely. Land Cruisers aren't great on that, which is why a lot of people obviously step up. They do an aftermarket suspension conversion to try and step that up. But point taken. Interesting one.
Thanks, Mike. Good on you. Bye bye. Okay, we'll get to this evening's Toyota 300 series. Even though it isn't necessarily called the 300 series.
I mean, everyone's calling it that, and it probably will be called that. But
Phil from the Canyon says, Toby, any truth in the latest speculation that the 300 series is being launched in mid-April, on sale end of May, and it's going to be powered by a Mazda inline 6 twin turbo diesel?
Wow, I hadn't heard that one about the Mazda engine.
They wouldn't do that, would they?
No. I would be surprised. So one thing Toyota tends to do with its vehicles, if you have a look at the engines and where they use them, obviously there's a lot of cross-pollination of engines between, a brand will create an engine, a 2-litre 4-cylinder engine, they'll spread it far and wide. They'll use it in small cars, performance cars, larger vehicles. A brand like Mercedes might put the one engine in 15 or 20 cars. Like it can literally be spread that wide. What Toyota tends to do with their engines is they split their commercial vehicle engines and their passenger vehicle engines. So and on the commercial side are all their 4-wheel drives. So for example, a Toyota Hiace van uses a 2.8 litre 4-cylinder turbo diesel, which is also in a Hilux, which is also in a Prado, which is also in a Fortuner. But you won't see that engine in any of their passenger car lineup. So it's not in a Kluger, it's not in any of those other ones. So in the passenger car side of things, they've got, I guess they focus more on refinement, and other factors that don't necessarily impact the commercial vehicle side of it. So that inline 6-cylinder that Mazda's developing at the moment, they're doing a petrol one. I didn't know about the diesel one, but the inline six-cylinder is obviously a passenger vehicle-focused engine. And I mean the fact that Mazda has its own BT50 that doesn't have its own engine. It's got an Isuzu engine, not a Mazda engine in it. Would suggest that that I'm not sure Mazda's necessarily going down that route. And I would be stunned if Toyota allowed another car company to look after a model like Land Cruiser.
Like that, it's just.
I mean, that's it. There is a strategic alliance between Mazda and Toyota, and they're working on an electric car at the moment and a bunch of other things. And they share things like they've shared in the past hybrid systems, for example. They've shared technologies under the skin. So look,
anyway, if it's going to be launched mid-April, you don't know about it.
No, and it certainly won't be launched. Well, I'd be stunned if it's on sale in Australia late May, because we would have heard something by now.
You would have heard something by now.
And my understanding is it's actually that actually pushed it back a little bit, partly because of COVID last year, but also
Uncle Gavin would have given us a call.
Yeah, that's right.
He would have had to have been unloading them.
He'll see them first. But all
right.
So look, short story is, as I said, I'd be stunned about that engine. I would have thought Toyota would keep it in house, and the Land Cruiser is such an important car for them. It helps define that brand. I'd be stunned if they shared it with anything else.
Let's find Jesse again, who I think we've got him back. Hi, Jesse. Sorry about that. Thanks for waiting.
Hey, Philip. Hey, Toby. Thanks for taking my call. I was calling because I'm in the market for a second-hand 7 or 8 seat vehicle, and I don't really know where to start. I've got a budget of about maybe 17,000 or less. Yep. And I'll be doing probably quite a fair bit of driving on the highways to like Brisbane and Melbourne.
And yeah. So you're obviously regularly putting people in the back seats, yeah?
Yeah, people in gear, yeah.
Yeah, right. Sounds like a band tour or something.
That's exactly what it is.
I guess. Cool.
Are you in the band or are you the roadie, Jesse?
I am in the band, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Look, the number one choice would have to be a Kia Carnival for 2 reasons. One is it's a pretty good car. It's sort of basic inside. You're looking at one for 17 grand. You're going to have to go, I would guess, 6 or 7 years old, something like that.
Yeah.
You're also going to notice on the market quite a few high mileage ones because it was a popular car with rental car fleets. So do a bit of research on that. I guess there's a lot of probably friends of yours who've hired these vehicles in the past who maybe haven't treated them as well as they maybe should have. So some of them didn't get treated too well. So keep your eyes open, do a fair bit of research on it. But a Kia Carnival is certainly a good place to start. They did a diesel and a petrol version. The diesel's obviously going to use less fuel, and it's a better bet for that long-distance touring you're talking of. It's got a heap of space, and the one big advantage is even with it's an 8-seater, and even with all 8 seats in play, you'll still fit a fair bit of gear in the back. Like it's still got a very large back seat. You're then talking, you're then stepping up to something like Volkswagen multivans, but I think you'll have to go so old on one of those to get one to sort of 17 grand. You can look at something like a Honda Odyssey as well. An Odyssey's a reasonable car. The engine on it's a little bit underpowered, but once you've got it loaded up, you'll certainly feel that lack of power, but it'll get the job done and it should be fairly reliable. Or you can look at something like a Hyundai IMAX, which is also a reasonable car as well. So the negative with the IMAX, it doesn't have the safety features of those other ones, things like side airbags and so on. So it's a little bit lacking in that department. But it's effectively a commercial van with seats in it, which the Carnival isn't. The Carnival sort of was designed as a people mover from the start. But
is the diesel engine generally more expensive than the petrol engine?
Yeah, as a general rule, yeah. So they start off a couple of grand more expensive in the new car market. And in a vehicle like that, they tend to hold their value reasonably well. So you'll probably pay a fraction more for one of those.
Okay,
but,
and the fuel efficiency is like significantly better?
Yeah, I mean, on a freeway it won't be as pronounced as it will be around town, but you'll still, I mean, I would guess, say, the diesel might use something around, once you've loaded up, something around about 8 or so litres per 100, whereas the petrol might use 11 or 12, somewhere around there. So, you could probably a 30-odd% difference in fuel efficiency, somewhere around there. So,
okay. Yeah. Good luck with it, Jess.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Good luck with the band and the car. 1300 800 triple. Well, it's good that people are still on the road.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Dave from Moornabah. G'day, Dave.
Hi, how you going? Good, thanks.
Not bad.
Look, my question is, I'm an old school sort of mechanic where, I've sort of done a lot of my own work on cars at home. And, obviously with the generation of petrol and diesel engines, that's really not that hard if you're mechanically minded. But where are we going to go with electric cars and hydrogen fuel cell cars? Is it going to be a safety risk, or is it going to be too complex? And the other thing I'd like to add to that is I'm noticing that a lot of manufacturers now are starting to give really astronomical warranties. Like I saw an advertisement there for one that's giving 10 years warranty.
Mm-hmm.
So saying before, price of a car $50,000, double that for a hydrogen cell car. Is the manufacturer going to say, well, look, you can't work on that car, you can't touch it, it's a safety risk. We will give 10 years worth of warranty, it's built into the price. Where are we going to go with that? Is it going to be the end of the home mechanic?
Yeah. Is it the end of the home mechanic? Yeah, interesting question.
So really quickly first on that 10-year warranty which you're talking about, which is Mitsubishi, so they advertise it as a 10-year warranty. It starts as a 5-year warranty. To get the 10-year side of the warranty, you have to service the car at a Mitsubishi dealer, so you can't get it serviced by an outside mechanic. It must be by the Mitsubishi dealer, and over that 10-year period. And I know people who've done the calculations and said you're better off sticking with the 5-year warranty, getting it serviced at an external mechanic, a local mechanic, and potentially putting the money into an aftermarket warranty or something like that. So it's the 10-year warranties. There are quite a few conditions around that. In terms of end of the backyard mechanic, I would argue that we're already at that point. I mean, you look at cars these days; they're pretty much run by computers. Yes, you've got the oily bits, you've got the metal that you can look at and try and tinker around with it.
You can still change the oil filter.
Yeah, and
but
I mean you can do the basics,
yeah.
But so many times the things that are going wrong with a modern car are the electronics in it, not necessarily the mechanical components. And that's why you can plug into the OBD, the onboard diagnostics, and obviously a lot of mechanics. I mean, every mechanic's got one of those, got the tools to plug into that. You can buy one online for $100 and use your phone to check out the basics as well. So I would argue, in a way, that electric and...
I'm fortunate, though, because I'm an electronics engineer by trade, and I do actually play around with ECU management and mapping and that sort of thing. So I'm probably a little bit maybe different than, say, the average.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I'm an expert, but, a little bit different than the average home mechanic. But I think what I'm getting at is it going to be just like zero cutoff? Hydrogen cell car, too dangerous, you can't do it?
Well... I think with the electric side of it, I mean, you look at the parts that need servicing on an electric car. You don't, as I said, you don't touch the motors and so on. The main things that need servicing are the same bits on an existing car. It's things like brake pads. It's checking the tyres. It's checking the wheel alignment. They've got cooling systems, so EVs have a cooling system in them to keep the batteries and so on cold. So you flush that cooling system out, replace it with new coolant. So there's all those sorts of things. But the electric motor and it's usually a single speed reduction gear, so a single speed gearbox. They don't have a servicing schedule to them in most cases. So you don't need to touch those, and theoretically not much should go wrong with them. So as I said, I would argue today that I think working on a modern car today is probably harder than working on an electric car in terms of, the potential things to go wrong, and the complexity of a modern internal combustion engine is enormous compared with the simplicity of an electric motor. And as I said, at least the electric motor is very unlikely to have anything go wrong with it. So,
well, I've got a 200 series diesel Land Cruiser, and I'm not going to touch it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dave. Good on you, Dave. It's a good question, though. Yeah. 1300 800 222. John's got a Tesla. Did you say you've got 340,000 Ks on it, John?
Yeah.
What do you live in? You live in the car, do you?
Well, I'm thinking I do. I'm actually just about to pick up a client here at the Central Coast.
Yeah.
It works as a very busy commercial hire car.
Yeah.
Just you've got me right in the middle of picking up some folk. But yeah,
no, that's okay.
My Tesla's got 341,000 K. G'day, how are you? I'm just on the radio at the moment, so having a chat to the good folks at Sydney ABC.
Oh, right.
Now, so this Tesla, like the the prior caller was worried about, where would his mechanical expertise be needed. Well, Tesla called me in for my first service when it covered 80,000 kilometres, right? At that point, they said, we'll see you in about a year. My front brake pads, your expert there said that brake pads still need servicing. Well, they do.
But they don't wear out often.
Yeah, that's right. Because of regenerative braking, my front brake pads lasted in this 2.5-ton car 150,000 kilometres.
Wow.
My rear brake pads lasted 260,000 kilometres.
Yeah.
Whereas my old Audi Q7, about the same weight, you'd be lucky to get 40,000 kilometres out of those brake pads, and you'd be changing the rotors twice every second pad.
Yeah.
Now, the thing that goes with these cars, from my current experience, is they are heavier than average.
Mm-hmm.
The Teslas run on the GLE suspension of a Mercedes-Benz, the Bilstein suspension, so you're looking at I've had to change upper and lower control arms.
Yep.
Ball joints go more regularly than most.
And shock absorbers and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
absorbers,
There you
because
go.
they're heavy cars.
All right, you better talk to your passenger, John. Thanks, mate. Good on you. Bye-bye. Interesting.
It's true, though. I mean, there's certainly less maintenance and lower running costs with electric vehicles. It's just, I mean, obviously the price to get in them at the start is certainly higher than an internal combustion engine at the moment.
Yeah. Jan, what are you trying to buy?
Well, Toby, I'm presently driving an XR64, which is the last of my husband's cars.
Mm-hmm.
I'm now 75 years old, and I'm about to move to a retirement village.
Yeah.
And I really want something small and fast, but with 4 doors and not too low to the ground. What am I buying?
What's the rough budget?
Oh, 50,000 maybe.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, 50 would be fine.
And so
more if I have to.
You want a bit of sportiness, a bit of fun, yeah?
Well, I do need 4 doors because all my friends are getting old as well.
Yeah, right.
But I've been, like, my last lovely car was my S-Type Jaguar.
Yeah.
My husband's was a historic racing car driver.
Yeah.
So we've had, V12s and all the rest of it. And I'm used to going fast.
Yeah, wow.
I do the speed limit, but I do want something that has pickup and all that sort of stuff.
You want something with some stonk, Jan.
I do.
And
I don't want Korean, I don't think. I think I might be too much of a snob.
And you said you want it to be low to the ground. Is that right, or not low to the ground?
No, not low to the ground.
Not low to the ground. Wow, okay, that's a bummer.
Not too low. I know.
Yeah, okay, because that's a challenge. Because the way you were talking initially, something like a Volkswagen Golf GTI would have suited really nicely in terms of.
That's what my son would like me to get.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, that's a thought.
And there's a new one coming out very shortly in the next month or two. Yeah, there's an all-new Golf with. And
what would that be cost-wise?
They haven't announced the price. I can't remember what it is for the GTI. I think it'd be starting somewhere around 50, somewhere around there.
Oh, okay.
So that's certainly in the hunt.
It's not too low to the ground.
Well, look, it's no lower than your Falcon, for example.
Well, I don't want anything lower than that. I mean, everyone can get in and out of the Falcon right now.
Yeah.
But it's just that I've got a couple of driveways that are quite low and it scrapes every time. And
yeah.
I'm thinking I just need something a bit higher.
It doesn't wreck itself.
No, exactly. Well, that scraping sound.
Yeah. Well, look, the other part of it is to step into. I mean, the one thing obviously we've seen, I guess, you see the hot hatches and so on, such as Golf GTI. These days, there are a lot of performance-focused SUVs coming onto the market.
Yeah.
So
they're a bit bigger, though, aren't they?
Well, no, not all of them. There's quite a few small ones there these days that'll do a reasonable job. So I would still wander into a Volkswagen showroom, and you could have a look at something like a T-Roc, the 140 TSI version of the T-Roc, for example.
I've seen one of those on the road, yeah.
Which is Golf underpinnings, but it hasn't got the GTI engine, but it's Golf underpinnings, and it's a very good car. Skoda Kamiq is also well worth a look. A left fielder, and it is very left field, but something like a Volvo XC40 that's an SUV. It's surprisingly spacious. It's classified as a small SUV. It starts at about 50 grand, but it's a really impressive car for what it is. So that's also worth a look. And then you're on into, I mean, you can look at also top end of things like a Mazda CX-5 is
That's too big.
Well, go for a CX-30 then. So step down. This is the thing. They've all got so many choices now. You walk in, it's not just one model. They step you down in size and everything.
It's about the size I wanted, but I don't think it's fast enough. I don't think get up and go enough. I do a lot of country driving, so I've got to have something that's comfortable.
A bit, comfortable and sporty.
I usually have someone with me.
Yeah,
like
all right.
Kids or friends or children, whatever. But so I just need anyway. The VW is the one I'm going to look at.
Yeah, have a look at a Vauxhall and a Skoda. The Skoda as well, the Skoda Kamiq or even the Karoq.
Who makes Skoda?
Well, it's Volkswagen, so it's all Volkswagen stuff.
Oh, do they? It's okay.
Yeah, so it's Czech Republic brand. But in terms of which car comes from where, I was trying to work this out the other day with Tiguan. Some of them are from Mexico. One of them was from Germany. But so yeah, it's a little bit tricky to work that out on some of these, as in work it out off the top of my head. You can't remember where all of them are. You can figure it out pretty quickly by delving into it. But off the top of my head, I don't know where every single car's from. So yeah.
All right, Jan.
Okay.
You got some. Thank you. Some ideas there. 1300 800 222 is the number. Steve says, I used to service and repair my 1973 Hillman Hunter.
Probably had a lot of practice.
I had a Hillman Minx at one stage. A fantastic car. Yeah, anyway. They've died, don't they all? Terry. Hello, Terry.
Yes. Hello, how you going?
Not bad.
I might have missed the conversation because I jumped in a little bit late maybe, but I think you might have been talking about four-wheel drive just when I jumped in the car. But I've got a Nissan Navara, I think about 2005, dual cab, and looking to upgrade to something a bit bigger. I've got two young teenage boys and it's running out of leg room in the back for them. So,
so you don't want a ute, or you do want another ute?
No, I was looking more like the Toyotas was the first thing, or the Isuzu D-Max, that type of.
Okay, so you're still
a bit more space in there for the kids, and
you're still after a ute, yeah?
Not a ute. Like no, it doesn't have to be.
All right.
I had a ute here because it was easier for travelling and stuff, because I have a camper trailer and stuff as well. So that was always handy having the storage in the back. Yeah,
right. So D-Max obviously is a ute, the Isuzu, but I guess I'll start with. Do you go off road at all? Do you do four-wheel driving or?
A little bit, but not heaps of it.
Yeah, right.
But the idea is that somewhere down the track, I'm looking to sort of get a caravan and do some travelling.
Oh, right, okay. So it's got to be able to tow something. Yeah, right, okay. Because I was just going to say, if you want the comfort and you want the space, often you're better off stepping away from those heavy-duty four-wheel drives. They tend to be a bit compromised in that area. But look, really quickly on the utes, you mentioned Isuzu D-Max. It is one of the more spacious of the dual cab utes, as is Ford Ranger, Mazda BT50, which is the same thing as the Isuzu D-Max. They are pretty much the three most spacious of the utes. So if you're looking in the ute segment and you've got growing teenage kids that need a bit of leg room, then those three are going to do the best job. If you're happy to step away from those, you've got things like obviously Toyota Prados, but they're fairly expensive to get into. So the next step down, I mean, you've got an Isuzu MUX, the MUX, but the current one is the old generation car, and it really is feeling a bit tired. You're better off waiting.
I did go and have a look at the Nissan Patrol.
Yeah.
That was one I went and just...
Yeah, so you're looking at really big then. You're looking at...
that was just unbelievably huge. I mean, I don't think that's sort of the higher end of the scale, but that is amazingly spacious in there. The kids couldn't believe it. They're going, my God, there's so much.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's a step up to it, the whole thing. And in the base one, you got 8 seats. It's look, they're big things, absolutely. And the Patrol's a terrific car for what it is. It obviously uses a fair bit of fuel. It's a pretty lusty 5.6 litre V8, but it tows nicely. It's a really strong thing. Toyota Land Cruiser is obviously the next step up. I guess the direct rival, but we've talked about Land Cruiser a bit. There's a new Land Cruiser coming sometime this year, probably later or probably in the second half of the year. But I mean, one of the challenges with some of those large four-wheel drives at the moment is getting hold of them. So, petrol on some models, there is a wait that's stretching out months to try and get hold of them because the demand's gone through the roof and the supply, they're struggling to get them. So that's a challenge. But, look, you're looking in the right area in terms of petrol is worth a look, absolutely. And if you can deal with the fuel use of it, it is a great car. It's a big car. But as I said, next step down, things like a Toyota Prado or some of those utes.
Okay. There's some things to think about. Thanks, Terry. Bye-bye. 1300 800 222. Sorry, Brad, you've been waiting on there. Hello. How are you?
Good, thanks, Jen. Thanks for taking the call. How are you doing?
Good, pleasure.
I've got a growing family at the moment, and I currently drive a Mazda 3 MPS hatchback, nice little bus with a bit of squirt on the pedal, which is
manual
great.
only as well.
Yeah, that's right, mate. It's a rarity in this day and age, apparently, because I've been looking for a replacement, and they're sort of hard to find. But anyway, I was looking at getting a car that I can, put a couple of kids in the back seat with. I don't want an SUV, and so I sort of became attracted to the sports wagon genre, but they're a bit hard to find these days. I was curious what your thoughts were in that market.
Yeah, look, you're right in terms of wagons, I guess compact wagons that are sort of semi-enjoyable. There's probably a short list. Most of them are from Europe. Skoda Octavia, for example, is one. It's sort of Golf-based underpinnings, but in a cool wagon. They do an RS version of that, which is a sporty sort of Golf GTI type of one. So that's well worth a look. I mean, they're a terrific car. Mazda 6 wagon, not quite as sporty, but it's also, it's got a bit of pizzazz in terms of interior presentation and so on.
Yep.
And then Volkswagen as well has also got Golf and Passat wagons, so they're worth a look too. But in terms of the wagons, I mean, there's not many of the Japanese and Korean brands that do them because they've all pushed people towards the crossovers and SUVs. And I mean, Subaru Outback's the perfect example because they used to have Liberty and Liberty Wagon. The Subaru Liberty's dead now. And if you want a Subaru wagon, it's an Outback, so which is also a terrific car, but it's probably not going to quite have that, I guess, that sharpness and sportiness that it sounds like you're chasing. So yeah,
that's it. I mean, I'd sort of been looking at, or I'd sort of wandered into the Audi showroom and had a look at an Audi S4, but the servicing costs and the stories I heard sort of scared me off that one a bit.
Yeah, right. So you're looking at top end of the market too, where you've got, as you say, Audi S4s, and if you can go right up to the RS4, it's a great thing. And BMW 3 Series is also, the 3 Series is well worth a look in terms of sport, a good blend of sportiness. The 330i, for example, is a great car.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right. One worth looking at. Thank you.
Thanks, Brad.
Cool.
Bye-bye. 1300 800 222. We've got time for last one. G'day, John.
Hello there.
Hi.
How you doing, Toby?
Good.
Nice to be able to finally catch you. I've been trying for a couple of weeks, but that's fine.
That's all right.
I just want to talk a little bit about electric cars. I'm looking seriously at buying one. I've been looking at them for a while, and what I rather like the look of is the new Volkswagen ID4.
Yep.
Maybe the Nissan Ariya, but I'm not quite sure how far away that is.
Yeah.
And the Nissan Leaf's been around for a while. Are they still worth considering?
So the Leaf, they're just about to do an update in the next month or two with the Leaf, and it's going to be called the Leaf E+. So it's going to get a bigger battery pack and a bit more power. So that's coming out shortly. I haven't driven that E+ version of the Leaf yet, but as I said, it's a step up in terms of performance. The Leaf is one of the older school EVs. It's a little bit less impressive than, you mentioned, that Nissan Ariya, which is a very futuristic looking car that's heavily focused on technology, whereas the Leaf you get in it's the basics with an electric motor. It hasn't got any of that sort of snazziness to it. And you mentioned the Volkswagen ID4, which I think you're right. There's a heck of a lot of interest for that car in Australia, but don't get your hopes up. Volkswagen Australia desperately wants it. They can't get hold of it because they blame the lack of Australian emissions regulations as a reason that head office won't supply it to them. They need to supply it to other markets that do have emissions regulations. So the ID4, they're saying the earliest it could come to Australia is 2023. So you're still at least a couple of years off for that one. So Nissan Ariya, I think the earliest that would arrive, and this is me speculating here, I think would be next year. But you've got a whole bunch of these other things. Have a look at the Hyundai Ioniq 5. Have a look at the Kia EV6. Yes. They are two terrific looking ones as well. And they're going to sort of slot into that similar sort of market segment, I think, starting around the sort of sub 70 grand mark. And have a bunch of that tech going on as well. So those two are worth a look. Mercedes just announced today the EQA pricing and a few other things. So, yeah.
That's pretty dear, isn't it?
77 or 80 grand, something like that. Yeah, it's going to be up there.
Anyway, John, some thoughts there. Sorry to squeeze you a little, but we are up against the news bulletin. Just quickly, you've been driving the Toyota Supra GTS.
Toyota Supra GTS, yeah. So the updated version, 280 kilowatt engine, BMW engine. So I've talked about Toyota and engines before, but this is the 3-litre inline 6-cylinder BMW engine. A terrific engine, and in that car it actually works really nicely. Steering's still a fraction too sharp for me, but it's a proper sports car, this thing. I mean, it's close to 100 grand, so I'd want to be.
See you in a couple of weeks, Toby.
Sounds good.
Terrific. Toby Hagan and Motor Talk, and we'll have him back in a couple of weeks. Sorry we couldn't get to everyone, but we did our best. Toby's editor also, by the way, of evcentral.com.au. Check it out for all the info on electric cars.
You've been listening to a Nightlife podcast. For more great conversations about the issues that impact you, as well as features on travel and food, head to the Nightlife webpage. You'll find it at abc.net.au/nightlife. You don't need to be a night owl to enjoy the nightlife.